Hello, YouTubers. This is Joe Chad with another voice interview. Today I'm interviewing Neil Kaplan. Did I say your name right?
Close enough.
How are you today, Neil?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Chad? I call you Chad. Great. Your name's
Yeah,
Chad Joe, right? No, no, no. It's Joe Chad. Sorry, Joe.
you can just call me Chad. So, do you want to tell us well, how did you start? How did you start in that?
Yeah, first of all, I should say, whenever anybody asks me how I got started, I always address that by asking, why do you want to know? Do you want to know because you want to know about me, or do you want to know because you're trying to find out information about how to get into voice acting yourself?
The information.
Okay. See, then I usually tell people, I say, I'll tell you that happily because it's a story. Now, on the other hand, when people ask me about how I got in because they're interested in learning how to get into voiceover themselves, I usually tell them don't worry about it because the world that I broke into doesn't exist anymore. And what I mean by that is technologically, the world of voiceover has changed so vastly over the last 30 years that to try to follow the path of someone who has been doing it for a while doesn't make a whole lot of sense now that you've got the technology to take advantage of. To create YouTube projects or to create projects for Fun or Die or to create projects for one's own website are things that just weren't available to us, 25 years ago. So, but since you're just asking for the sake of information, I essentially have always done voices, quote unquote, my whole life. Um, I grew up doing impressions of some of my favorite characters, some of my favorite actors, and then started doing that on stage for talent shows, and eventually even did just a little bit of stand-up comedy in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I eventually started studying theater at the University of Southern California and then musical theater at a place in New York City. And, throughout the whole time that I had been doing theater, I found that when I was developing a character, I would usually develop it from the vocal standpoint and then base a lot of my work off of those choices. The character choices would basically be to support that voice. And if that didn't necessarily work, or I shouldn't say it didn't necessarily work, but somewhere along the lines of doing the show, perhaps I learned more about the character and the voice would develop as well. It would change from my initial choice. Well, that happens. And that led to um, work in New York City, doing actual just voiceover work, doing impressions for the one of the local radio stations called CBS FM. And I found going in and recording stuff on a mic to be a lot more comfortable than I had ever been on stage. That sense of stage fright isn't really there. And so I started learning about voiceover and started pursuing that. My first job was here in New York City back in 1987. So at this point, 28 years ago, was my first foray into voiceover. And I loved it so much that I decided, yeah, this is what I really want to do. And since 1996, when I got my first role on a animated television series, it's been my primary pursuit, and for the last several years, my primary source of income. So that's I hate to say in a nutshell because that was a pretty big nut, I suppose, but that's how I got started.
Oh, very fascinating. When did you know you could be a successful VA?
I'm still not sure if I can be a successful voice actor. I work a lot more than most of the people in my union, but I still don't work enough at this point to tell my wife to quit her job or that we don't need a second income for the household. So while I'm more successful than some, I'm not quite as successful as you might think.
Okay. Do you ever done work on the production side of any voice projects?
You know, I did for a little while. I created a nonprofit to help provide audio entertainment for the troops in the field. And so I had done a little bit of writing, a little bit of rewriting, a little bit of directing, a little bit of producing to put those projects together. Now, unfortunately, that nonprofit is, well, I should say fortunately slash unfortunately, that nonprofit is still not operational at this point in time. We've folded up the tents and moved on to other things, basically because technology provides our men and women in harm's way with a lot of entertainment opportunities. And our services really are not as needed as they were, say, when I originally came up with the idea a decade ago. But I have done a little bit of production work there.
I think I've heard about that. Sean Long put on his YouTube channel.
Right.
We've used to put in the website for it in 2010.
Uh-huh.
Ah, I just remembered that now. What was your most challenging project?
Um, wow. Well, I'm going to say my most challenging project was probably the first time I worked on Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and played a Hutt. You
Ah,
know, I went in and the script was written in Huttese. You know, like the old Mata Chuto Oto Solo ho 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 ho. You know, that whole thing. And you know, it's walking into a recording booth and reading a foreign language that you've never seen before, cold, with no rehearsal, no warm up. It's a little bit of a challenge. You
mm,
know, I got lucky that day because the director, after a few aborted attempts, um, you know, pressed the talk back button and spoke to me calmly and said, "Neil, it's not Star Trek." And what he meant by that, you know, because I'm a nerd, I knew exactly what he meant. He meant that when you're doing a Star Trek game and you're speaking Klingonese, if you pronounce it wrong, there are fans out there who know the Klingon language. And they will know that you said it wrong, and they will roast you over an open fire. On the other hand, Huttese is not a real language. George Lucas never had anybody create an entire language for any of his races. You know, he didn't do what Tolkien did when he wrote Lord of the Rings and create an entire elven language. It just didn't happen. So, if I mispronounced something, but I kept the intention of the line true, the audience wouldn't know. And so that gave me the freedom to relax, calm down, mess up, and know that it would be okay as long as I was still in the acting moment and playing whatever the intention was. So basically, at the beginning of every line, he would tell me, kind of give me an emotional clue as to what I was saying, so that every line didn't sound exactly the same. And so it turned from probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in a recording session to one of the funnest, which is nice. And then again, a lot of life is like that. You know, a lot of our biggest challenges turn into our greatest triumphs. You know, or our funnest opportunities.
yes. Has there like been a project where like you couldn't like understand what you were reading, like you didn't know how to pronounce that?
That was certainly part of it. And then there was the intimidation factor of, oh my gosh, what am I looking at? What am I reading? How am I supposed to do this? You know, and that was quickly taken away by my director, you know, reassuring me that it was going to be okay, and not worrying about, you know, whether I said Machtau or Machta, you know, or Machta. You do that with Klingonese, and Trekkies are gonna, like I said, they're gonna take you out to a phaser line firing squad.
What are you most proud of in your career?
Um, what am I most proud of in my career?
Well,
Um,
voice acting.
you know, I'm probably most proud that I've made people happy.
You have.
I'm probably most proud that, um, this simple thing of using my voice, which I was given on the day I was born, um, makes a difference, to people, and that they enjoy what I do. And I've had the good fortune and opportunity to travel to different points around the globe and meet people that like what I do, and that's been pretty cool. And every now and then, I'll be doing a show, and I'll meet somebody, and they're a nice person, and they want to get an autograph, and my prints usually cost some money, and sometimes some folks don't have the money. And so on occasion, I'll work out a deal where they'll do some volunteer work, and I'll sign something, or I'll record something, or it's basically my way of trading my talent, my ability to make someone else's community a nicer place. If I can sign your sketchbook, and then you go to your local animal shelter and volunteer for 10 hours, it's a win-win. I mean, you got what you wanted, and your neighborhood's a nicer place to live, and that makes me feel better. So that's kind of cool. And I've also met some people along the way that have their own personal challenges, as it were. Sometimes those challenges are physical, sometimes those challenges are mental, and they express a gratitude in meeting me that is very humbling. That reminds me, that even though I might not be where I want to be on a professional level, that my life holds um, an abundance of blessings, and it makes me realize how fortunate I am. And then if I can turn around and 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 put a smile on somebody else's face, and help them forget their challenges for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is, that makes me feel a little better. I've had the odd occurrence, or at least I thought it was odd in the moment, when I've been doing a convention, and this has happened 3 times now, where someone has come up to me, and they're deaf, so they've never heard my work. So I would think
Oh,
they're not going to be a fan of mine, and they are. And one gal who I met at San Diego Comic Con was so overjoyed to meet me. I mean, she was literally beaming. I mean, a smile as wide as you can imagine. I've put the picture up on my fan page on Facebook a couple of times, because her smile was infectious. Her energy was infectious. I mean, this was somebody who was so happy to meet me and had never heard what I did. And her friend explained it was because she read the manga, she watches the show, I guess with subtitles, and just the mere fact that the producers entrusted the role to me, she felt, well, I should be a fan of yours. If you are the voice of this character that I love, if you are the voice of Madara Uchiha on Naruto, I'm a fan of yours. And it was just, I mean, it was like she told me that I was basically the keeper of something that mattered to her. You know what I mean?
huh. Yeah, I know.
It's
That's
like
the.
there are some people who are fans of my work as Optimus Prime, just because I was Optimus Prime. Yes, their favorite is Peter Cullen. Yes, they loved Gary Chalk's work on Beast Wars and then later on the Unicron trilogy. And yes, they loved David Kay on Transformers Animated. But, it's like they look at me and go, "But you were Optimus Prime too, and thank you." And I mean, that's such an honor. Look, I grew up a fan of many things myself, so I get it. A couple of weeks ago, I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm just at a food truck. I'm at a food truck. I'm getting tacos, and right past me walks Eric Idle. Nobody else on the street recognized him at all. And I don't like to call attention to people in public if they're trying to be private, because it's like,
Of course. Yeah.
what am I going to do? Shout out, Eric Idle, I love Monty Python, you're the greatest. And then 70 people are now trying to take pictures of him when he was just taking a stroll. So I usually, will try to walk up to them a little bit and say quietly so that nobody else can hear their name. So I walked up near him and I said, Eric. And he turned and he looked me in the eye, and I literally almost started to cry. And I just said, thank you for everything. And I could tell he knew what I meant by saying everything. I meant the show. I meant the movies. I meant the other things he's done outside of of um, of Monty Python, whether it was Honey, I Shrunk the Audience at Disneyland, or the Muppet stuff that he's done, um, or of course Spamalot on Broadway. And he looked at me and he smiled. And he said, "You're welcome." And for me, that was just, if anybody when they meet me, if they feel even 1% of that, I get it. I get it. And so I take that very seriously and very humbly when somebody offers me that same sort of salutation or that same kind of respect, and that means a lot to me.
Wow, that's got to be the best convention story ever.
Oh, thanks, man.
I have problems with myself. I've got
Right?
autism, which is where like most of my parts of my brain aren't connected,
Okay.
and like I become obsessed with stuff and that, and I can't help it. Not like in a stalker way, as in I want to know
I
more
get it.
about it. That's with voice acting.
Okay. I get it. Look, you know, we all, everybody's got their own story, everybody's got their own challenges, and we just have to, every now and then be a little kinder to people. It's like one time, and this was when I was not so nice, but there was one time at a convention when somebody basically came running up to me. I mean, they were not literally running, but they were walking fast, walking with intent. They were heading right toward me like a laser beam from across the room. And he came up and he said to me, You're my second favorite Optimus Prime. Peter Cullen's better." And he caught me off guard. And I turned around and I said to him, "What would make you think that's a good thing to say to somebody? What would make you think that you should say that?" And I looked into his eyes and he wasn't quite hearing what I was saying, and that's when I realized he wasn't trying to put me down. He wasn't trying to say anything negative. He was trying to give me a compliment. He was trying to tell me that yes, Peter Cullen is up on a huge pedestal, but that he put me on a pedestal as well. And I really was very disappointed in myself in retrospect. When I'm at a convention, look, if somebody comes up to me and I'm having dinner and they say something like that, that's different. But I'm at a convention and I'm there for the fans and I'm there for the people. and I'm not there for myself. It's not about stroking my ego. It's about meeting people and making their day a little bit better. And at the same time, getting to see another part of the world and being exposed to life and things like that. You know, my mother was a special ed teacher, and I've known people my whole life who, you know, the way I look at it, Joe, is we all have puzzles, and we're all missing a couple of pieces to our puzzle, you know?
It's true.
And some people are missing bigger pieces, and some people are missing more pieces, and but you know, we just have to remember that our own puzzles aren't perfect, and not
It's
to
true.
judge other people and which pieces of theirs are missing. And so I really try to remind myself, you know, that we're all on a journey and we all row as hard as we can. And just to be a little kinder and a little bit more understanding to folks is the better way to be as often as we can be there, you know. And so when I'm at a convention, that's when I need to be as open and as understanding as possible.
Mm, that's true. I hope to see you at a convention, though, if I
Well,
ever
I
go.
hope so too. I'd love to come out to England and do MCM Expo. I think that would be great. I know, you know, because they sold the DVDs of Robots in Disguise, the one that I did back in
I have them.
2001. So you guys have been watching the show. You guys have been watching the DVDs. So I find that the fans of Robots in Disguise are actually a lot more active in Great Britain and
It's
Europe.
true.
So hopefully they'll bring me on out there. Now I have worked on a few other things that are a little popular,
Yes.
you know, StarCraft and
Power Rangers.
StarCraft and Power Rangers and Star Wars and a couple of new projects which hopefully you'll enjoy when I'm able to announce them. You know, so
Of
I'd
course.
love to get out there. You know, I would love to.
Should we talk about the production of RID?
I'm sorry?
I said, could we talk about, what it was like working on RID?
We can try. Now, what you have to remember is, even though you may have watched an episode yesterday. For me, I worked on it 14 years ago. Huh. So you probably have a better memory of it than I do. You know, so you can ask, and I'll do my best to answer.
Cool. I was just wondering, what was it like working on this? It's like, did you enjoy
I had
working
a
on it?
great time. I had a blast. It was terrific. You know, and it was an honor. It was a privilege. You know, I mean, it's one thing to work on something where you're playing an original character and your only responsibility is to telling the story. Well,
Oh,
it's another thing to work on a character that's already been established. You know, then you owe a little bit something to the fans. You owe a little bit of something to the original. You owe a little bit of tribute to those that have come before you. And I took it very seriously to have the opportunity to borrow Peter Cullen's big metal shoes for a year. You know, that was quite an honor, and it meant a lot to me. Um, you know, one of my favorite things was during the production of that show, I actually got invited to be a guest at my very first convention ever. Nope,
BotCon. Is
nope.
is it?
It
What
was
was it?
called geez, what? Oh wow. Now I'm blanking on the name of it because I think they only did it one or two times, but it was in College Station, Texas, and it was actually in, I want to say, October or November 2001. BotCon didn't happen until 2002.
But that's the only one I can find about your conventions
Yeah,
in 2000
yeah,
era.
no, this um anyway, the darn. I'm having a hard time remembering the name. Anyway, but we were doing a Q&A, and the fans asked, and this will tell you, that I was not a huge fan of Transformers before I started
Okay.
working on it. But somebody stood up and they asked, Neil, will we ever hear Optimus Prime say "roll out"? And my answer to that question was, is that important? And obviously, I found out that yes, it was. And I said, because the whole room kind of went, yeah. And I said, all right, here is my promise to you. From this point
Wow.
forward, everything okay?
It was just my phone going off.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, you can edit that out.
Yeah, I'll add it out. Where were you? Sorry.
So anyway, I told them that I would say it in every episode from that point forward. The nice thing about dubbing a show where your character has a face mask is you don't have to worry about matching the lip flaps.
Oh
So
yeah.
from that day forward, every single episode had, Optimus Prime saying, roll out or transform and roll out. But every episode from that, and the fans made that happen.
Wow. You have the best stories of the convention so far
Oh,
that I've heard
you're
from other voice
you're very
actors.
kind. You're very kind.
I am. Then you got bought to BotCon next year.
Yes. Now, BotCon, I did two BotCons in 2002. My first, my sec, or I should say my first and my last. Um, were both in 2002. The first one was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we were out there. Not only some members of the cast of Robots in Disguise, but also a couple of members of the cast from G1. And on Friday night of the convention, there was a special dinner where we all got together. The actors were seated at one table, and I guess people who registered ahead of time or paid an extra fee or something like that also had dinner in the ballroom. Everybody was dressed up, wearing suits, wearing nice dresses or whatever. And during dinner, the other actor and I were sitting there, we're chatting, and we're asking each other, "Hey, have you heard about next season? Yeah, I hear it's called Armada. Do you know when we start working on it? I don't know. My agent's called. I haven't heard anything. What do you know? I don't know anything. Yeah, hopefully it's a good season. It'll be a lot of fun." And then the hosts of the evening, stand up at a certain point and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special surprise for you. It's the first episode of Transformers Armada." At which
Uh,
point, we then realized we were out of a job. That's that
oh,
is how we found out we were not coming back. We did not find out from the production company. We did not find out from our agents. We found out embarrassingly in front of fans who, when they heard that the first episode was being shown, stood up and applauded. So, unfortunately and unknowingly, and the not with ill intent at all, nobody knew what they were applauding, but basically the ballroom exploded into applause over the fact that we just lost our jobs. And it was one of the most uncomfortable moments in my career, to be honest with you. And it was kind of painful. It was like, wow, I thought we did a nice job. How come we don't get to continue with the show? And the second BotCon I did was in Milton Keynes in 2002, and I got to meet some of the British Transformer fans. And that was the last time I was invited to BotCon. Since then, I've been lucky enough to do auto assembly in Birmingham, twice. And last year I was invited to go to TFCon in Toronto, Canada. And those have been great experiences, and it's been, it's always nice to meet an appreciative Transformers fan.
Auto Assemblies is his last time this
Yep,
year.
I know, very, all good things come to an end, and we thank Simon and his crew for putting together a great show for a good number of years, and I'm sure he's going to have some very special things planned for this summer, and hopefully there will be another Transformer convention that will pick up the rope, and perhaps I'll be invited back out to the UK one day to celebrate the Transformers and their history.
If you do, I'll meet you there.
I'll look forward to it, Joe.
Yeah, well, there is a upside to the old Armada thing. It was that Armada was crap.
Well, here's the thing. I knew that when I saw it. I mean, as soon as I heard the announcement, I, it's like, okay, it's over, it's done. Let's watch this cartoon. And I watched it, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. And, people asked me what I thought at the convention, and I told them, and they thought I was just being bitter, you know? And so it took a couple of years for some of the fans to come around and kind of agree with me that the mini cons weren't exactly the greatest thing ever, and that some of the work done on the show wasn't terrific. I'm glad that the next two seasons got better. I've had the
Yeah. Oh
I've had the
yeah.
good fortune to meet a lot of the guys who worked on the series. I feel I'm fairly friendly with Gary Chalk and David Kay at this point. I met Scott McNeil, and they're all great guys. And you can't hold any ill will against somebody who got a phone call for a job and said yes. You know.
It's true.
So,
It's true.
but overall, that series Armada, not the greatest.
I know. I love to hear like you voice Optimus Prime again. That ever happens.
I would love to do it. I've certainly moved on with my career, and I've played lots
Of
of other
course.
roles that I really enjoy. But should the phone ring and should they ask me to play Optimus Prime again, the answer will be yes. And
I
and
know.
I and I and
Uh,
I'll be there with bells on.
yeah, it won't happen until the wait. Oh yeah, I just remembered the new series is called Robots in Disguise as well.
Yes, unfortunately it is.
It's,
So I
it's
guess I
just
guess we
weird.
now have to call the series I worked on Robots in Disguise
Oh
oh
one.
01, or at least call the new one, RID 15, I guess.
Yes, Red 15. That is actually a cool, sick name.
Alrighty, Joe. I've got only a couple more minutes. So is there anything else? One last question that you're really burning to get the answer on?
Um. Well. Um. Just one more
Sure.
question. I have actually three more
Uh,
questions. Can you talk fast?
we'll see what we can do.
Okay. What would you change about the industry if you could, if you like had the power to?
You know, I don't know that I would change anything about the industry itself. It's a wide industry. It's varied because voiceover exists in so many different places, whether it's a talking toy or a talking elevator or public service announcements or commercials or videos online. There's so many different things about it. I don't know that I would necessarily change anything. If I could change anything for myself, I would just like to work more. But then again, most actors, most artists, all they want to do is work and create and do more and be creative and discover. So I wouldn't change anything about the industry. I would just change things for me.
Cool. What was it? Damn, I forgot it. Um, oh yeah, what does the future hold for Neil?
No idea. You know, I hate to say it. There's only one thing that I know the future holds for Neil, and that's death. You know, so I'm hoping we can put that off for another 70 years or so. You know, maybe 65. You know, um, so other than that,
There's one
the
more.
the other than that, the future is a
Oh,
question mark. We'll see. We'll see. Will it bring me lots of friends? Will it bring me lots of work? Will it bring me lots of joy, lots of adventure? I sure hope so.
oh, sorry if I disturbed you, then.
It's okay.
It went a
It's
bit. It went just
not,
then.
not a problem. So your last question?
Any advice for any inspiring voice actors wannabes?
Yes. Learn to act. There's a reason it's voice acting and not just voicing.
I know.
Learn to act. Do it for the love of creating. You know, it's like, for instance, Joe, have you ever gone to see community theater? Have you ever gone to see a play that was done by people who aren't professionals?
Yes.
And did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, because the people have like the energy.
Right, because they're good. See, that's the beautiful thing about art is someone can. Do you know anybody who paints? Do you know what?
Paint.
Yeah,
I painted.
no, like paint, like a painting. Do you know anybody
Oh,
who just paints things at home or draws?
artists. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but they're
Yeah,
not necessarily professional, but that's okay, right?
yeah.
Somebody listening right now could be drawing something. They're an artist. Doesn't matter if they sell it somewhere. It doesn't matter if they have it on display in an art gallery. They're still an artist. Well, the same thing with an actor. So, 100 people applauding sounds the same whether it's 100 people applauding in in you know in London, or if it's 100 people in Berlin, or it's 100 people in Salinas, California. 100 people applauding enthusiastically sounds the same whether an actor is getting a paycheck or they're doing it for the love of the show. So people can voice act without getting paid. People can
Yeah.
voice act on things that they create. That's the great thing about the internet. You want to make a cartoon? Make a cartoon. You want to make a radio play? Make a radio play. You don't have to be a professional to do this stuff. But the people who are going to decide to pursue it professionally, they have to hone their skills because there's a lot of people out there who are pursuing that same goal. There are a lot of people who want to voice act. And so it's a very competitive industry. So if it's something you really want to do, have another skill, have another way to pay your bills while you're trying to put your career together. Because if all you do is approach your auditions with the desperation of, I need to get this, I need to book it, I can almost guarantee you won't book it. You won't get it because they'll hear that tension in your voice. They'll sense the desperation in your energy and they won't choose you to do the job. So have another way to support yourself while you're putting together your career and you're creating your future. Um, Allow yourself to pay your bills. I'm not telling you that you won't make it. I'm telling you that it'll be difficult if you don't find another way to support yourself until things get good.
That's true. I've done most of those stuff.
All righty, Joel. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you so much for your time, Neil. I appreciate it so much, and I hope to keep in contact to tell you how
Well,
this went down.
that's what the fan page on Facebook is for. You can tell them, Joe. I keep in touch with people on my fan page, don't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty accessible there. That's that's my trade-off. That's what I say to people as like, as a thank you for leaving my personal page for my personal friends and personal colleagues. I created the fan page and it's there so I can interact with the fans and they can post pictures from conventions and they can let me know about, or let us all know about when they're doing creative things, or when they're doing a podcast, or a webcast, an art show somewhere. I want to make it a place for people to feel comfortable to share their own creativity, and also at the same time,
And, and I will.
keep in touch with them. Anyway, Joe, it's been a real pleasure.
Okay, see you, Nick. I'll see you on your fan
Or
page.
Neil.
I mean, well, or did I
You
say
sure
Nick?
did.
Ah, sorry,
So
Neil. I know a lot of people called Nick,
it's quite all right, Joe.
and I know no one
I,
called
I
Neil.
I started off calling you Chad, so we're even. All right, sir.
You just call me Chad.
You
So
you take
see ya.
care. Bye now.
Bye.